So this video is about sections 15 to 18 of Sraffa, Production of Commodities by Means of Commodities. Originally I was intending to do sections 15 to 20, but I haven't actually managed to find a system which meets Sraffa's criteria for sections 19 and 20. I'll explain more about that at the end, but it means that I'm going to just skip those sections for now. And in these sections, Sraffa's really just playing around with the system he's already presented, and he's showing what happens as the wage rate changes. So Sraffa's first point is that if the ratio of capital to labour is the same in all of the industries, then there won't be any price changes when we change the wage rates. Whereas if the ratio is different in different industries, there must be price changes. So first let's test this, and again I'm just using Wolfram Alpha Calculator, and we'll use the same system as was used in the previous video. So there's going to be 12 iron, but I'm going to use A for iron because if you use iron, Wolfram Alpha thinks it's an imaginary number and it's quite annoying. So 1 plus R plus 0.7 L is going to equal 575 wheat, and A iron times 1 plus R plus 0.3 L equals 20 iron. Again, we're going to have 575 wheat as the final consumption commodities to be shared between both workers and capitalists. So we're going to make that 100, and then we're going to have L so it's a different number. L can be anything between 100 and 0. So if we start with L equals 100, that means that the whole of the 575 wheat is going to labour and there's no profits for capitalists. So I typed these equations into Wolfram Alpha, and Wolfram Alpha is given the answer here. So if L equals 100, then the price of iron is 2.5 per unit, and the price of wheat is going to be 0.173913. And now if we make L 70, so now L is 70, and we can see that the unit price of iron has changed, so iron is now 2.75. R has also changed because now there is a profit rate because the capitalists are going to get this extra 30. The price of wheat hasn't changed, and that's because we've already set 575 wheat to be 100, so one wheat is always going to be 100 divided by 575, which equals 0.173913. Now let's try L is 40, and again you can see that the price of iron has changed, now it's 3. Now if we change it, so instead the capital labour ratio is the same in each, so we've got 12 iron plus 8 iron is 20 iron, and therefore 12 iron is 60% of the total iron, and 8 iron is 40% of the total iron because 8 is 40% of 20 and 12 is 60% of 20. So if we here change this to 0.6 labour and here 0.4 labour, so now the labour is in proportion to the capital used, then we can repeat this process. So here we can see that when L is 100, A is 3.333333 in this system. And then we can see that even if we change L, so now L is 70, but A is still the same, still 3.33333, and the profit rate is of course also changed. And at L is 40, we see the same thing again. So the prices aren't changing, and that's because the way the Sraffa set up the equations, like I showed last time, the profit is going to be in proportion to the capital input. So this is always going to be in proportion to this. And so if the capital to labour ratio is the same in all of the industries, then because labour is also in proportion to capital, labour is also going to be in proportion to the profit. And that proportionality means that you can change the dividing line between labour and profit without needing to change prices, because whatever you change it to is still going to be in proportion. So when it's not in proportion, like in this system, you end up with a deficit or a surplus on the average profit rate when you try to vary the wage. And Sraffa says that those industries with a low proportion of labour to means of production are going to have a deficit, and those with a high proportion of labour to means of production will have a surplus. So again, let's try this and see what that means. So this time let's set the labour in each industry to be 50% to make this clear. So each industry is going to be using 0.5 L, and we'll keep the 12 iron going into wheat and the 8 iron going into iron. So now the proportion of labour to means of production is 0.5 divided by 0.6 in the wheat industry, because this was 60% of the total iron and this was 40% of the total iron. So now it's going to be 0.5 divided by 0.6 equals 0.8333 in the wheat industry, and 0.5 divided by 0.4 is 1.25 in the iron industry. So Sraffa says that the wheat industry is going to end up with a deficit on its profit rate, and the iron industry is going to end up with a surplus. So let's test this out. If we start with L equals 70, we're going to get the following table. We're going to have iron here, we're going to have the workers' wages here, and we're going to have the profits here, and here we'll have the wheat, and here we'll have the iron. Okay, so we've got the results from Wolfram Alpha here. We know that L is 70, so we know that this is going to total 70, and so this is going to total 30, because the wheat is being divided between the profit and wages, and so we know that all of the wheat is equal to 100. A is 3.91667, and there's 20 irons, so that's going to be £78.33 in total. And we know that there's 8 iron in that goes into making iron, so that's going to be 31.33, and 12 iron is going to go into making wheat, so that's going to be 47. Now we've got 50% labour in each industry, so that we can just divide 70 by 2. So this one's going to be 35 and this one's going to be 35. And now we can just work out the profit. Either we can use the profit rate R, or we can use 100 minus 47 minus 35, that's 18. Or we could have just done 47 times 0.382979, which is also 18, because their profit is equalizing over this. And 33 times 0.382979 is 12. So we've got our input-output table. Now supposing we want to try and keep all prices the same and reduce L to 40. So instead of typing it back into Wolfram Alpha, we're going to keep these numbers the same because we want the unit price to remain the same. Then we reduce this to 40, and now this is going to be 60 because we know that this and this are equal to 100 already. And now, so we know that there's 50% going here, so this is going to be 20 and this is going to be 20. Now to make this system able to reproduce itself, the profits are going to have to also change. So if we now do 100 minus 47 minus 20, then now the profit here is going to be 33. And here we're going to do 78.33 minus 31.33 minus 20. And here, this is now going to be 27. But now if we divide this profit by this capital, you're going to see that the profit rate isn't equal anymore, as it should be based on Sraffa's assumptions. So 33 divided by 47 is 0.702, and 27 divided by 31.33 is 0.862. And so you can see that these are no longer equal. The wheat industry looks like it's got a deficit on its profit rate, and the iron industry has a surplus on its profit rate, even though we don't know what the exact profit rate should be. The average profit will be in the middle of those. So since the equalized profit rate can't be achieved without changing prices, Sraffa thinks that as the wage rate changes, so will prices. In real life, if this does happen, it's likely to be a longer-term phenomenon. Sraffa also points out that when the price of the product rises or falls, there's a difference in the quantities of commodities that correspond to each of the inputs into production. So if we go back to Wolfram Alpha and make the system L equals 40, then I'm gonna just write out the input-output table. Again, 3.6667 times 20 is 73. So you can see that the price of the capital has changed relative to the wages and the profits. And then 44 times 0.818182 is going to be 36. And then 29.33 times 0.818182. So it's 24. Now if we compare the part of the product that corresponds to the price of each of the inputs, so we can see that over here when L was 70, we had 20 iron divided by 78.33, and then times 31.33 is going to be, that's the 8 iron that was used up in production. And then if the part of the product that corresponds to the wages is going to be 5.1 iron here. Then times by 27, this one's going to be 6.9 iron, and that's going to add up to 20. But if we do the same thing over here, so that this time it's going to be 20 divided by 73.33, and then times by 29.33, it's still going to be 8 here, because 8 was what we set in the equation. But when we try and see the part of the product that corresponds to the wages, this is now 5.5, and times by 24, this is going to be 6.5. So you can see there's a difference here between the parts of the commodity product, which is corresponding to each of the different sections of profit, wages, and capital. And so you can see that even though in both cases 20 iron was produced, in the first case, because the unit price of the product is higher, there's more of the commodity equivalent of money that goes towards making the profit than does in this case. And Sraffa says that the steeper the rise in the price of the product relative to labour, the smaller would be the quantity of it absorbed by the wage. It's a little bit difficult to see so clearly with the wheat section because we already set the 40, but you can clearly see here as well that it's going to be a higher proportion of the commodity product of wheat is going to be needed to make the capital here, and a smaller commodity equivalent in wheat is going to be required to make the means of production here, and a higher proportion therefore is going to profit here and a lower proportion here. In sections 19 to 20, Sraffa says that as the wages reduce from 100 to 0, there's going to be times when the price of the product alternates in rising and falling relative to the price of its means of production, and also that the relative prices might alternate in rising and falling in relation to each other. Actually, I haven't found any of this behavior. Every system that I tried was linear in the way that the prices moved, both in terms of the prices relative to each other and the price relative to the price of the means of production in each industry. So if anybody does know a system that's going to behave in the way that Sraffa's saying that it will, then please leave me a comment and I'll make that video. But otherwise I'm just going to move forwards because I spent quite a long time trying to find one and I just couldn't. So